Welcome to the Creative Marinade podcast with myself, Francisco Rebello, and my good friend, one of the coolest friends I have in Sydney, someone who does lots of really interesting things, and someone who I really want to share their story, who they are, what they do today, and what's inspired them, because I myself I'm really curious. I've been to many of his gigs. I've listened to his music on Spotify, and I think the world should know more about Julien. My basic intro would be that Julien is is a music producer. He is also an illustrator and also a sound designer. He grew up in the Netherlands and is now living in Sydney, Australia. You produce, like, I don't know if you describe it as like chill hop music, the kind of music that I go to when I'm like, I don't know, needing, I don't know, some chill vibes to study, to work to like relax to, I guess. And but also when I see your gigs, like, it's all very like experimental and electronic, but plus like real sounds and things like that.
True.
What do you like? Maybe give an introduction to people that don't know you. Like, what is it that you do as your kind of the main thing, as far as like what is the output, and also what does it actually mean that you do day to day? Because I think like people that want to be a music producer maybe don't realize what it actually involves. Like, do you go to a studio? Do you do it from home? What about like the aspects of business and things like that?
For sure. I mean, those are a lot of questions all at once. I feel like, honestly, like people need to realize that maybe the thing you're getting success with is not the first thing you've done in your life. Like, my background is like more experimental electronic music and even just like experimental rock. Like the first few things and the first few years I was making music, it was way closer to like crazy FX Twin like music, very intricate and experimental and fast and very different from what you hear nowadays. Although like I feel growing up with my dad playing like Brian Eno's music, like which is like the godfather of ambient music, I feel like that somehow resonated in what I do, and it kind of like spoke to me as a character, because I feel I'm a pretty like like introvert, calm person, even though like I feel like you can hear that in my project because that's quite close to who I am, but I didn't not necessarily actively like try to chase like the chill hop or lo-fi genre that a lot of people associate my music with that now. And but it's funny because like I feel like everyone has like deeper waters and grounds and roots that go way beyond from what you just hear. Like your work would have like a long story of like 10-15 years of experimenting and being in touch with like a lot of different music or art, and you're only seeing like the surface of someone's work. So yeah, I feel like I went through making a lot of different things, making drum and bass, making dubstep, making glitch hop, alternative indie rock, pop kind of music. And you'd be like, whoa, Julien, is that you? It's like, yeah, it's like another shade of me. And I feel like the thing that I landed on was something that just really resonated with me. And I feel that kind of struck a chord also with the audience. And I'm really grateful, but like, I've also been making music for like 17 years to the point where finally I have some success with my project. And I'm super grateful to be able to focus on my project this music project and illustration project as a sort of full-time job. I mean, it's combined with like, it's like more complex than that. But I feel this is something I want to like say to like people that have just started out is there's nothing wrong with experimenting and feeling lost and having the idea that you're like, am I really on the right track? That is so fine to feel. I feel like that's more valuable of having success within 2 years when you're like 16 or 18. Because actually, when you're that old, you just need to have fun of what you're doing. Like, you shouldn't even think about making it a career straight away, because that it's, I mean, yeah, it's great that it's a dream, but like usually it's more healthy to just follow what you really like doing. Sounds a bit cheesy, but it's the fundamentals, in my opinion.
Yeah. I kind of that resonates with me a lot. Or my younger brother actually like produces music, and like I always say to him, it's like, because every time I come home, he's at his computer and he's making music, and but I can definitely see it as this thing that people put a lot of energy into, like, and or more like something that's done as a pastime and as a enjoyment and experimenting and sampling and stuff like that. But you managed to kind of turn your passion into something that, yeah, as you said, is like a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
How was that process? Like, you've always been making music inspired by your dad and instruments and experiments with different styles.
True.
How did that come into like
I mean,
what you're doing now
it's a
professionally?
very long, winding road for me, and it's a tedious process. Like, to turn that into from like a passion project into a full-time thing is because I, from the start, once I finished my studies, I got a music degree and I finished in 2012. The first, I started straight away as freelancing, so I've been like freelancing as a sound designer since for like 10 years now. And wow, that was a rough, rocky road, you know. Like, the first year I almost didn't get any jobs, and I just really had to get myself out then. And I'm not even talking about the music I was making, because I was making music on the side constantly. I was even releasing records on like vinyl that never sold. I never sold anything out, you know. Like, there was a moment where I was working like 3 side jobs. Like, I woke up at like 3:45 in the morning, went on my bicycle to a UPS distribution center, start working at 4 a.m., throwing like, you know, packages onto a rolling belt, and they would get into like the little vans, and then those vans pick up the packages, and the buses that deliver them, they send it to like the people on their doorstep at 8 a.m., you know, like, so around 8 a.m. they will start like driving to people's houses. But so like I would do that, get back home, having to grind something out, then maybe have a nap, then go to my second side job at a convenience center, just like stacking chairs, rearranging chairs, you know, doing weeds around the buildings. Get back home, do sound design work if I could, make some music, have some food, and sometimes even play a gig at night, and then get back home in time so I have at least like 3-4 hours of sleep, and then rinse and repeat. Like, that's like it started like to go better after a few years, like around 2016. But then I moved to Australia, and I kind of went back to ground zero a little bit, because like suddenly I didn't have the gigs to rely on, and all the freelance, you know, companies. Most of them, they were like, "Well, you moved to Australia, we're hiring like a local guy," you know, like, you know how it goes. So, man, it's a rough process, but in the end, and also like with my own music, like, it's, so the music that I produced under my own name, it's not a very marketable kind of music. It's very intricate and melodic and fast and not very easy listening, but I was really proud of it, and I felt there was value in making it and keep experimenting and doing things, not just out of career, but just because I really like doing it. And yeah, it was only since 2018 that I started doing my Saantport project, because I haven't seen my family in like 3 years at that point because of visa reasons. And yeah, I kind of struck a chord in finding the right person at the right time. It was like an owner of a label. He came to Sydney. We hung out like one afternoon, had a really good chat about music, had some dinner, and I sent him a track like maybe 3 months later, 4 months later. And he was like, yeah, sick, I'm going to put this on a compilation. And I was the owner of Chill Hop Records, which back then was like one of the biggest like lo-fi hip-hop labels. They put it on the compilation, and that was like the first Saantport track ever. And yeah, I got lucky because of that, my project was immediately like put in like the algorithm. Like there's like Spotify editorial playlists that follow what Chill Hop does, because they're like, well, they're kind of the hip kids on the block. Let's see what they're doing, and they probably picked up on what I'm doing. And so yeah, it's like, man, it's a whole lifetime.
Yeah, that's cool.
Tell, like
yeah. So like, you made a good point that I didn't even account for, which is like moving, like you're doing everything to make a kind of follow your passion in music, and then you change countries, then having to start that network again of like gigs and
it's tough
collaborators. So this guy, the record label person, was that someone in Australia or someone from?
It was a Dutch guy.
Okay.
And he was just traveling, so like yeah, like we just like met through mutual friends. Like he was a good friend of like actually like the illustrator of their compilations. He's a really good friend of mine. And he just said to him like, yo, you should meet up with Julien. He's a really nice dude. And that's how it kind of went. But like to go back to like what you said before, like to make it like your passion project like a career is almost always a bad starting point. Because like, and from that point on, since I graduated, or even like when I was still studying, like between 2008 and 2012, I have made it a mantra of like saying, I just want to make music what I want to make, and I don't want to like be dictated by my financial income. So I already separated the sound design work as an applied sense of my expertise, and I'll just make money through that. And I just love just making music. And sure, if I earn some money, like, I don't know, a few $100 here and there through a gig or maybe some royalties, but nothing substantial, I'm the most happy person to be there, to be out there. And I think the moment I decide to like, all right, fuck it, I don't give a shit anymore, that's when the opportunity came through. Yeah, especially because I was not that hungry, and I was mostly hungry for my own artistic soul. And I feel like if you just make something really genuinely, like, I think the right persons are going to come on your path, and they will see that what you're doing is you're really doing it for yourself. You're not trying to like really, I mean, obviously it's very easy said than done if you do suddenly make it your main income, but like, because like, I wish every creative person to be able to do their pet projects and that to become their main project. Like, I feel like I would love everyone. I would wish that to everyone, but it comes with a lot of responsibilities. Like, there's a lot of like traps.
Yeah.
That you can fall into, I think.
Speaking like, just because you're a music producer and like my brother is too, and him recently, like, he got a job, like a kind of nicely paid normal job, and his music has kind of taken off more than ever, like, because he's just doing it, like, he's not trying to email record labels and blah blah blah. He's just going to like London radio stations and DJing and producing and putting things out, and like yeah, when you said that, made me like, I'm so happy for him for having that kind of like release, and him just being able to like express himself. Like the music he makes is kind of influenced by our culture and stuff like that, but
That's great.
electronic, and
You should
his
harness that.
yeah, and he's just doing it like to express. I feel like he would do it whether anyone was listening or not, and so yeah, and I've seen him struggle and stress and be unhappy trying to do like all the right things and get to the right places, and yeah, sometimes it goes like that, and like with your story too, like it can start from something small, like
Yeah,
snowboarding.
like what I'm talking about is mostly like the ignition, right?
Mm.
It's almost like, imagine like you start painting or illustrating or doing something creative, and you're just like, okay, what I'm making now must be the best thing that I've ever made.
Mm.
You're prone to set up yourself for failure in like an artistic sense.
Mm.
And the way I see it is with like a career is quite similar. It's like first of all, you need to say something and know what you want to say and having fun saying it, and then hopefully that ignites something. But don't get me wrong, like obviously once you have that ignition, you have to do good business decisions. You cannot like let it just sizzle or make a bad decision where you just lose all your rights, you know, like that's another one that's really important. And I've made it myself a mantra. Like when I started Saantport, like I had a lot of like shady and dodgy record deals that I did in the past, because I've been releasing under my own name since 2004 when I was still in high school, and I've literally lost tens of thousands of dollars, basically bad contracts, just shady people, things in the music industry. And I feel like my mantra really when I started Saantport was like, I'm going to be as independent as possible. People will, if it's going to work out, and it's suddenly when it picked up, I suddenly got so many deals coming through in my inbox because, well, I see something is happening, the streams are good, you know, like there's a lot of people that want a piece of that pie, and fortunately I'm a little bit older that it happened when that happened. I just politely reclined all of them and was
Oh,
just like,
really? Even okay.
I've only worked with like people that I've seen face to face, that I had a real chat, and then still I'm not doing anything with them before I know them a bit better than just an email or a phone call. That said, I mean, like I'm sure like most people that reach out to me, that they're very nice, and I'm always open for a chat. And yeah.
Out of curiosity, like, how is it different, do you think, doing what you do now, like in the Netherlands or in Europe, or doing it now in Australia, and also to an extent, like I feel like you're quite international or like locationless. Like, so I'm from London. There's a lot. So we follow that all the scenes and music producers and stuff, and even now you released a record and it came out on FBI radio. Like there's so much infrastructure for some stuff like that in London, and in Australia is like I don't know too much the different how the scenes grow, how DJs and producers grow, and but then also even in my own journey, like coming to Australia, I don't feel like I'm just coming to Australia. I feel like I'm expanding my network in the world, like, and same with you. As much as you do gigs in Australia, I'm sure you have your streams show that you have followers around the world and stuff like
For sure. Like honestly, yeah, most of my fan base and audience, they're outside of Australia, but like it's just purely because this country is just an interesting country, that it's so isolated, but it also means a lot of things are very niche, and there's a lot of like talent here in Australia, 100%. But I mean, it's also not a massive scene, you know, like in London and in Amsterdam, we got the benefit that we got basically the whole Europe. Like literally I like when I was still living in the Netherlands, I've done gigs like all over Europe. I've played in Barcelona, played in London, um, I've played in Stockholm, in Berlin, Bratislava, out of all places, stuff like
I've been
that.
there.
Yeah, it's a funny place, but I like that place, and the people are super lovely. But what I'm trying to say is, like, we in Europe, you just benefit from this super multicultural like society and countries that you can literally just like fly for an hour and you're just already in London.
Mm.
Um, it's like, oh, you just go for a gig and then you literally go back the next day. And in Australia, you just doesn't really happen. You go to Melbourne, but so you're just not as like you're not as exposed as over there. But like that's I think something that makes a huge difference that here creatively, and especially with like music, you gotta like really make your footprint. And it's sometimes quite tough to make that footprint, especially if you're not from here. Like, I mean, yeah, it's still equal chances. So it's like it's all up to you in the end. But I don't know. Growing up somewhere gives you like a lot of connections and gives you a lot of years ahead in terms of people that you might know. Your classmate could suddenly be a presenter at FBI radio, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's not going to be the case if you're just here for like a few months.
No, no. Yeah, that definitely happened in London. So how do you, what would be your, like, how was it, the whole, like, starting again in Australia, like, for you, like making,
Challenging.
yeah, like a network, yeah, starting in as a, yeah, what you do in Australia.
Well, it was really difficult. Like, for me, like personally, I just went to so many events, and
Mm.
I sometimes you have a good night, sometimes you have a bad night, but there's nothing lost. And along the way, you just find like kindred spirits and people like you liked, and you just jam. And sometimes that stays with just one or two jams, and sometimes they just become like super good friends, and you just realize that you just have a genuine connection. And I feel like that's really something that's super important. um, but then in terms of like work, yeah, that was really hard. Like I still have not a lot of like Australian clients. um, yeah, it's a lot of mouth to mouth,
Yeah.
like to get gigs, and it happens more and more, especially because I'm like a PR now and I've been here for 6 years. But
Mm.
uh yeah, it was like I've worked as a dishwasher in a cafe for a while, and I've worked in a homebrew store, and other than that, like I was surviving on this one client in Amsterdam that, despite moving away, they really like working with me, and uh, I worked for them for like 3 years, and I'm super grateful.
Mm.
um, but yeah, they kind of they definitely yeah, they helped me a lot, definitely.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think I'm curious to know more about the sound design
Mhm.
aspect of things, or like, I personally also believe in this kind of having a like a kind of a steady income job, or a job that allows you to be completely like free in your free time, like passionate projects and
Mhm.
stuff. But my day job is also kind of something that I am. It's something that I'm like is creative in a lesser in a different sense from like just artwork,
Of
but
course.
and your job is still quite a cool job that people would love to have, like as far
Of
as like
course.
sound design and things like that. So tell us a bit about what that actually is. Like, what does a sound designer do? Like, why would they be hired? And
Um,
maybe the type of like environments and companies that you would do that for.
for sure. I mean, like honestly, sound designers are quite rare because like you don't really need that many sound designers for like a huge project. You could literally have like one sound designer for like for a short film or like even like a feature film, you have one sound designer and a composer. But so yeah, what we do is like we recreate sounds. That's the Foley part. Like imagine like in a movie, like if you touch things, like the actor would touch something. This is something that I don't do, but it's a side of sound design, right? So like imagine like, you know, someone's picking up this little plushie and he's just like, if I do this, do you hear anything?
No.
No. So like someone actually, but in the movie you probably hear something like,
Yeah.
so someone actually goes into a studio somewhere in a dusty studio somewhere in Sydney and records. Not even, it doesn't even have to be this. Something that sounds similar, but is not looking visually, and they recreate sounds on the spot. So that part of sound design is called Foley.
Okay.
What I do though is more electronically, like, so I do a lot of like sounds for UI and UX.
Yeah.
You know, like if you get like a window and you open it, it's like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I just go into my I can use a synthesizer, I can record sounds with my microphone and then process them later, and then just like make that movement with the sound. So like you change the volume, you change pitch, you have like a you know, like you can make all these like sounds and movements. And something I personally do a lot is like I do a lot of like voicing for like cartoon characters. So like I would, you know, make really weird sounds with my voice, like
Hiya.
you know, or stuff like that. Or you get like a character that has a bit of a lower voice, is like
Was we speaking a language just then?
yeah, not really. Depends on what project it is, but like, you know, I was like mostly sound designer for museum exhibitions.
Okay.
It was like not really like it's more like science fair museums. So they're like comparable to like Questacon in Canberra.
Okay.
You know, like they're like science for, they're basically museums for kids. So like and they have a lot of mini games and little like screens to explain things. So there was a lot of like that kind of stuff that I had to make these weird poppy sounds, like, all right, 3, 2, 1, make a photo. You know, like stuff like that. And that would have been my job for like a while, and I was enjoying it because like, and I feel like this comes back again to like me as a child. Like, just I was just quite a busy kid. I was a bit hyperactive, and I think I got more calmer the more I could like focus that onto my music. But like, I feel like this is an inherent part of my creative soul that has seeped into my work, that I was always making weird noises and sounds, and I just realized I could use this for like a lot of things. I mean, yeah. So this is kind of like the one part of sound design. There's a lot of different types of sound design. There's more like ambiences and atmos. It was like a job I did for, because I worked for like Media Monks for a little bit, which is like a media production company, and they're such a big company, they would have a few sound designers, but I spent a whole afternoon, for example, making like room tones for the Jumeirah hotel in Dubai.
Room tones.
So a room tone is, if you don't hear anything, it was for a website for them, and they had basically a 360 view. You could visit every room of the hotel. It's like the most expensive hotel in the world. You probably have heard of it. So basically my job was make the sound of nothing, but there needs to be sound. If you're standing in a very luxurious room, and I was like, all right, cool, I can do that. And they were like, but you cannot put like aircon sounds or fans and stuff like that, because it's a super luxurious hotel. You cannot hear it, you want it to be quiet, but it cannot be quiet. So it's like, like that kind of stuff is like, oh, it's tickling my brain. So I just spent like a whole afternoon just making the most insanely subtle noise escapes that you nearly didn't hear, but they just felt luxurious.
That is a challenge. That is actually crazy.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So that's another thing. It's like you do a lot of like atmos and textures, and it needs to enhance, because another part of sound design, for example, is like if you have like a really luxurious car like a BMW or like a Tesla, if you open the door, it needs to sound nice, right? So like you open it, you hear this click. Sometimes they're like not even the material, they just made it in a certain way so it just sounds nice. If you close it, you're together, like it needs to sound good. So like there, I can guarantee you there's a sound designer on board to design these cars. Nothing with a speaker, which is crazy if you think about it.
What do you mean, not a speaker?
Well, door doesn't have a speaker, so
but are you saying the sound is produced and replayed electronically, or physically the sound?
Well, see it as an instrument builder. So like like how someone that makes a guitar doesn't have a speaker, but he just needs to make the guitar sound as good as possible. So now think of someone who's building a door. Someone designs the door, and then a sound designer is like, we need to make it like this to make it sound like that when you close it. So you have the best sound, the most luxurious, heavy, silky door.
So they may even fabricate extra bits of metal to make it sound better.
Or a little piece of felt, or something like really subtle, maybe a little ledge, or and there's so many applications of this, and that we don't even realize in our life. There's people that make the beeps for like the Woolly self-scan service, like beep. Like that. There's so, or like like our home appliances and stuff like that. Microwave beeps and washing machine melodies and all that stuff. So these are like all kind of applications. Like I haven't really been much into like the physical side of things, but I'm, like I said, I'm more of like I like making like kids jingles and weird character voices. That's always been like something that I really like doing. I hope that touches a little bit what you were asking.
It does, and made me also like think of new things. And also, what about like you're also an illustrator? Is that like a professional thing, or is that what?
I don't see myself. I don't really. I was just a kid that was always drawing a lot in school, and then I went to do music. So, that kind of was on the back seat for a long time. But I always liked just drawing and illustrating, and and at one point I just realized I like making worlds. Like I love building worlds, and just doing it sonically. I just realized it didn't cover the whole picture, really. So, and I was also very poor, so I couldn't really pay anyone for artwork. So there was that. I felt like it made sense to just do the artwork for my own project. And from there on, it kind of like escalated a little bit. I suddenly like, the label was like, oh yeah, by the way, can you also animate this? I was like, dude, I'm barely an illustrator. I've never even opened After Effects. So yeah.
But you did.
So I basically said to my friend Nick, I said like, yo, can you help me? I want to animate my own music video, and it needs to be done in 2 months. And I did. And he was like, Julien, you're a lunatic.
Yeah.
But I managed to do it, and I kind of broke myself in the process. But yeah, like I think like I have still a lot to learn as an illustrator, because like, man, I'm basically completely self-taught, and I know a lot of people would have eye-opening advice for me to do certain things. And um, for me, it's more of like, I just like making the illustrations part of my music project, because I feel like they're one and the same. Um, but
Mm.
yeah.
But even that is pretty like learning, like being able to draw is one thing, but learning the software, Photoshop, Illustrator, then
It adds up.
going to do After Effects and stuff is like,
It's insane.
yeah, or like me and my brother, I'm a designer, he's music. I can't really do music, he can't really do the design, but you can kind of do like both.
Well, yeah, I
Um,
mean, it kind of came hand in hand when I grew up. Look, like I
yeah.
have like one of my biggest inspirations, and so my grandmother was like a really influential painter from Paris. Um, and when I grew up, like when I was 6 years old or something, whatever, I was really young. She said to my mom, "This kid, don't spoil him. He has a creative soul." So from
Yeah.
that moment onwards, every gift that she would have gave me were like pencils, or music CD, or anything music or drawing related. Like I was painting with her, and she taught me quite a bit of things. And my dad wanted me to become an architect, actually, because yeah, I don't know, based on my drawings, and he's an architect himself. So
Mhm.
um, but I didn't chose that. And I mean, I could have gone the traditional route, but yeah, I feel like music has definitely been the main ingredient where I see myself as a professional. And I mean, there's so much to learn. This is a very big world. There's a lot to learn, even outside of just illustration and music, I feel.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, I was going to ask you a bit about your inspirations, or like you told us about what you do today or in the
Mhm.
last few years, but what do you think may have influenced your approach or style from where you grew up, or who inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of grew up in Saantport, which is a tiny Dutch village, like in the dunes, and I've always had like really fond memories of like just walking and just playing in the dunes, like really sandy and grassy and foresty areas, and I was just always hanging around with my friends there, and I just feel like I wanted to like encapture that in a world, not just sonically, but also just like visually. And um sorry, what did you say again about this
Like,
question?
just a bit more about what where and what and who
Yeah,
inspired you.
yeah, and I like I loved comic books also. Like, my mom had like this massive collection of like French style comic books. So like we had like Mobius at home, which is like one of my biggest inspirations visually. He's
Mm.
the guy that he worked for Marvel at one point. He's the one that made Silver Surfer. Um,
Okay.
but his own work that he didn't do for Marvel was like, it's just super beautiful, saturated, alieny, almost subconscious uh, kind of worlds that he was creating, and the colors were like incredibly like saturated and beautiful, grainy, almost sepia hues, like work. And it was also really trippy. Like I feel the French school of like comic books, they had something really trippy LSD-ish vibe like
Yeah, yeah,
around
yeah.
them. Like so yeah, I feel like that was a big influence. And um the other big influence, which is quite clear in my work, is obviously like Ghibli. Um I mean, I've watched all these movies so many times as a kid and growing up even. Like um both musically and visually, I feel like I try to like, it's inspiring me, but I'm trying to like actively avoid using any of their like their visual
Yeah.
references, because I feel like So like I like using like the other ideas from like the French comic book background in my work, which is a little bit more, yeah, like it's almost touching like Dali-esque type ideas. There's another like comic book maker called Fred, and he made like a very short comic book series, which is super niche, but it's called Philemon. And my mom has like the original like comic books from the 60s,
Yeah.
and I looked it up the other day, and I said, Mom, these a single one of them is like worth like 300 between 300 and $800,
Oh, really?
and she has like all 14 of them or 13. It's like you're sitting on like a crazy collector's item. But
Who? So good.
no, go for it.
No, no, no. I was also, you mentioned earlier about someone being influenced by the godfather of ambience. Who was
Oh,
that?
Brian Eno. That's like another like I think my dad that's my dad's side. It's like really the music. He would always put on like really weird music. So he would put on like anything between like really ambienty kind of music and just like Captain Beefheart, which is like, it's like a band where Frank Zappa said that this guy is batshit insane, which is a big call coming from Frank Zappa. And he brought me to like my first gig ever when I was 14 to like one of the most legendary punk bands in the world called the Dead Kennedys.
Okay.
Just they're like insane, and they've only played like the Netherlands once, but like these guys are like the OG of punk. Like they're insane. So I feel like just getting all these influences, like especially those weird shit, like then I discovered Affix Twin and Boards of Canada, and I was like, all right, I'm sold. From there on, I kind of like discovered Flying Lotus, and Flying Lotus brought me to the more instrumental hip hop eventually through like Jay Dilla and New Jabez, musically. But yeah, through a big detour of like experimental electronic music from the UK, mostly like Warp Records. Like I'm a big Warp Records fan. Like
that's Aphex Twin, is it?
It's Avex Twins, Boards of Canada. It's Flying Lotus. It's Chris Clark. It's BBO. What else is on there? It's just an insane catalog. It just keeps on going. Other than that, like Sigaros and Björk.
Björk, yeah. I was just thinking like when you told me about their task about the like making the noise for the Jumeirah Hotel, like the silent noise, but you know, I don't know, like maybe in a way you're influenced by these, like even your hometown sounds like quite ambient, and I don't know, like these details. It takes, it would be hard to make that sound that's not a sound to be so ambient, and even in like your music is quite like vibey and it's not too like cluttered and like the normal, like I don't know, like rhythm, like big kind of energy music. I don't know, like it's kind of like it is a task in itself to kind of create a vibe without like
for sure
loud noise.
I feel like for me that, because like what you just described me is literally the type music that I made to up to like 2015 2016 or something. And then I just went through a period where I was just like, this is a difficult period of my life. I didn't make that much music. I made one album in like the last 4 years or something like that. And then I just had like a moment of like, I have to put my feet back on the ground. It's like, what's the point? What's the thing? What I'm struggling most with is exactly that scattered and crazy, all over the place energy that my music usually had, even though there were like a lot of good ideas and some quite beautiful moments in there also, a lot of people always said to me, "Oh, Julien, it's good, but man, if you like scrap like about 90% what's in this track, you would have a really solid track." You know.
Yeah.
So I feel like Saantport is kind of like the moment that I did a self-realization moments, like maybe people are right.
It's
And
interesting you did it with a different name, like such as maybe was that deliberately
yeah,
to free yourself a different idea?
it was definitely like it came from like a moment where I was really homesick. I haven't seen my family in 3 years. um and I was just going through the photos from the past, and like where it's really like a project. It's like, where do I come from, like. And I really tried. I feel like everyone in their life has this moment where they're like, who am I actually? And I feel this is what I'm trying to capture in this project. It's like, who am I actually? And
Mm,
realizing what I've been doing up to thus far is like, sometimes you just got to stop and just rethink and recalibrate and just clear the canvas. And
mm,
and by clearing the canvas is at that moment was really like making sure that I didn't like fill the canvas completely again with clutter. So that project came out really simple but clear,
yeah.
and just trying to just catch that feeling of like, fuck, how was it like back in the days where you just like played outside with your friends, and that's it, like you just played some hide and seek,
Mm,
and that's all there is. And I feel like that's maybe one of the reasons why I did pick up quite well. I didn't really try to achieve gigantic things with it. I just want to like people to relive that little thing
yeah.
they just really enjoyed, I feel.
Yeah, that's always my favorite. Like in London, there's like Skepta, yeah, and he's like
Mm.
in his like most successful point was when he stopped. Like he made a clear line. I'm not trying to be an American rapper anymore. And he took it back to his roots and made it everything super simple. And
Yeah,
the
he's a great
messaging was
rapper.
simple. The aesthetic was simple. The like sound was like like really authentic, and it connected with it and with everyone more than what he did
Mm-hmm.
before.
100%.
I was gonna say, what do you like? What? So, what's your current like before we go? Like, what do you? What's like? What's happening for you this year and moving forwards? And what do you
Yeah,
actually answer that? And I got one last question for you.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's an interesting crossroads moment because I feel like, yeah, especially with like the Saantport project, like I've done some stuff that I'm really happy and content with, but I definitely feel like since 2018 I've established something, and now I need to bring something that's has a little bit more feet on the ground, and I just want to say more with the next projects, like the new album that I'm writing at the moment. Like, I mean, I can just repeat what I've been doing, but that's not very valuable. I just want to do something that, it's nice to see progression, and
Mm.
it's also cool to see like new ideas, new grounds. So yeah, I've been exploring that. I'm also practicing with a band, so like I'm
Oh,
playing.
cool.
I want to like play all the compositions that I've made and produced, and just play with no computer, no backing tracks. Just play these songs. So that's a thing. Um, what else? Learning to animate more properly, I think, will be really cool, and do way more travel. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. How was it going home like recently? Like,
it's
was
good.
it? Did it help with some sort of like inspiration or like
Yeah, for sure.
groundingness or?
Well, definitely good. Like lots of ups and downs. I like, especially because like my family is all over Europe.
Mm,
Going to like different countries made a big difference. But yeah, no, it was good to like see my family because Yeah, it's again been like 3 years since last time I saw them in 2018. So it's 2018, 2019. No, did I see them in 2018? No, I'm trying to like remember. I think it was 2018, and then I saw them this year.
Yeah. It's
It
been a
must be
while
like
for
3 years.
everyone.
Yeah, no, it's been pretty long, and no, it was really good to see them again. Everyone gets older. Also, I feel like this is it's like a thematic thing that I want to like incorporate in my work. Is the fact that I am writing music for kids. I'm imagining myself as a kid, but I am growing older. Like every year, like goes faster.
Yeah.
So I want to play with the concept of growing older and time. This is like an idea I've been thinking about. But
Mm,
it's been like, but it's been good to see my family, obviously. Um,
nice. And I don't know if this is a good question or, but
that's all
do you
right.
think you have any like one big dream or dreams that you started off with, or if it's now or when you were as a kid, like what you want to do with
Hmm.
your music or your creativity?
Mm, I think I've never had like very specific dreams. I I just dream of being able to build my worlds the way I envision them, and I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to what I want to do, and um, I just want to be able to live somewhere remote and just work on what I do, and being able to be very free in where I go, and but I don't have like yeah. Honestly, I'm super happy where I am now. Like, I feel like the dream is kind of like I'm already one step in, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's good.
Um,
And even I like what you said about um, working somewhere remotely and um, like creating your own worlds. Like it makes a lot of sense from what you told us today. And
yeah, I
um,
feel like for me, like I really like my dream. I think was to like be able to live anywhere, bring whatever I need, but I don't need much, and then I can just be so independent, almost like with outside of society,
mm,
and just do my own thing. And this is a temporary possibility for sure, but you know, I am happy that I'm basically doing that. I can literally be wherever in the world and do my thing. But I also realized while having that dream and now while having the possibility, I feel also like every person mentally has a home,
mm,
and that home is definitely Sydney for me, at least. Um,
yeah,
like, yeah, it's definitely earthing to have a place to go back to where your
yeah,
friends are and your family also. Like, so it's kind of like difficult in that sense.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's kind of like that would be the dream if I could be doing that.
Well, you're living the dream as well, as you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, today's this chat has been so cool. Like to kind of break to like like from knowing about you and knowing and speaking to you, like from what I knew on those like conversational level was like already like cool. But hearing
Thanks.
even like the kind of day job stuff about the challenges of making this silence that's not so, like that one really
And I mean,
tripped me out. That was
I
good.
got lucky that I was in that position because like I got before that I was like, man, I was just throwing packages on a rolling belt. Like
Okay.
I was
Yeah, yeah. You
I was
told
at
me.
the bottom of like everything.
Yeah,
Um, like being allowed to do something like that already feels like a huge privilege to me. It's like
yeah,
how many people can say that they've done that, you know?
yeah.
And it was something that I studied and I generally had fun to do that, but and that's just like me as a professional what I'm doing, but like man, um I yeah, like every creative having to go through things like that I have a huge respect for them, and even like people that take a job in an agency, still a huge respect to them as well, because like you have to sacrifice a lot to be able to do what you want to do. And I have definitely sacrificed a lot, like in terms of time and crazy work and not having a lot of money throughout my life. And man, it's not for everyone, but yeah, just that's why we gotta keep have each other's back also in some sort of way. And yeah, man, thank you so much for having this chat with me also.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
I feel like like what you say also resonates a lot with me. So yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
likewise.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess that's a wrap then. Thank you so much for having the chat, and
Thanks so much.
I hope whoever's listening, someone out there is inspired by this story, learns. I guess these type of stories are good to hear the realities, the grounding, the you know the the UPS packaging
Yeah.
part of the story, as well as the like inspiring moments that kind of happen along the way.
Also, can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
This is like a message to whoever listens
Yeah.
to this, and they're like scared to reach out to someone to ask them about a specific thing. I feel like a lot of people are like me, and I'm always happy to answer any questions someone has, or even if they want to like ask something that's kind of personal in terms of career. Um, Please always ask. Just send a DM to your favorite designer, or because they're probably just like you and us,
Mm.
and they're probably very happy to chat about it if you just approach it from a genuine angle, like you just want to know about something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Very true. All right, cool. I'm gonna stop recording now and say
Cool.
goodbye.
See
Thank
ya.
you, Julien. See you.